Hello YouTube, this is Russ Goslin. This is part 2 of my putty and filling tutorial on using putty. I just wanted to took out some fresh Milliput putty, and I was going to fill this big giant gap. I don't know if you can get a good idea, but it's right here. I got it backed with some styrene so I can pack it into. I'm just going to fill that right up. So here we go. So I rolled out my two-part epoxy of Milliput, and I kneaded it into a nice uniform color up here, and got a nice little ball. And usually when you're working with Milliput, it is on the sticky side. There you will get some residue on your fingers and such. So when it comes time to application, I just usually use the back end of a paintbrush and I dip it in some water, and that takes care of the problem right away. It won't stick. It'll just stick to the object that you are applying it to, and it won't stick to the actual applicator, which is the paintbrush. So I got my piece, and don't worry about when you're kneading it, oh my god, I got too much. I always end up throwing out the excess. I really can't use it. I don't know if you can wrap it in a bag and throw it in the refrigerator or something. Maybe somebody out there on YouTube can leave a commentary on that. So usually I just throw it out. And also, this stuff will go bad, and for some reason I don't use a lot. I've had this for about several months, and I still got more than half of my material. So that's just kind of the nature of the beast, I guess. So what I do is I just kind of roll out a little bit here and make a piece, and I just take an X-Acto blade, and I hope you can see this, I don't know. I kind of get a general idea of how much I need to fill, and eyeball it. And there I go, I cut it, and here's my excess. I'll just put that off to the side. I really don't need it. And here we go. Let's take a look. Might still have too much. I tend to, I think there's a natural inclination to put too much, so I always use a little less. And if you need more, just add more, not a big deal. So there it is. And so I'll take my brush, I got that, and I'll just sort of start it. That's right in there. I hope you can see this. So I'll just take my brush and wet it with some water on my palette. And don't need a lot of water, just a little water on the surface. And then I just begin kind of using some depression and kind of rolling it in and filling it. And it's just going to go right in, and as you can see, the Milliput isn't sticking to my brush handle. I used to use toothpicks and my fingers way back when, and maybe some metal tools, and I watched a YouTube video and they talked about just use some water, and it works really well. And as you can see, I still need a little bit more, so we'll just apply it. In some cases, it's uneven. It's always probably a good rule of thumb to start on one side and work your way towards the other. It's better. So in this case, I kind of have two spots that need it. So I'll just take my X-Acto blade and cut this remainder chunk and stick it in. Again, keep on dipping it with water. Your water is going to evaporate. And just keep on adding some more water, and just make some more depressions. And I use kind of like a rolling technique as opposed to just like stabbing it with the handle. I'll just roll it in, and in that case it kind of works like a steamroller effect. It kind of spreads it out. And I still got a few more spots. We just keep on cutting and adding as it's needed. In this case, it's not cooperating. So I hope this is a little bit more. I wanted to give you all out there on YouTube something to actually see. Sometimes we see people talk about all these different ways of working with models, but it's kind of like a cooking channel. It's kind of nice to see them actually cooking the actual thing that they're talking about. Gives you something to think about, and it's kind of exciting. And we'll just continue rolling it in. And rolling. So I apologize if you can't see this. Not much of a contrasting color, is it? But it's all packed in there pretty nice and well. And don't worry about it, don't worry about making it flush with the panels. You can go in later with sandpaper and sand it nice and smooth, and it'll be just fine. What you're mostly concerned is getting the proper amount of Milliput putty in there and filling in all those gaps. And also, one rule of gaps, I guess, is know the gap. Sometimes there's supposed to be a gap. Like in this case, I was going to fill these, but I went through my instructions, and I need to put a piece in there before I can finish any gapping. So always know which hole or gap needs to be plugged. So always refer back to your instruction sheet. So that's about that. Letting it dry. How much time? Now read your Milliput. Comes with some instructions here, and it gives you a guideline for how much time it dries. I usually just let it dry overnight. That way it gives me a nice insurance buffer that I don't have to worry about whether it's dry or not. And so tomorrow, or whenever I go back to the workbench, it'll be all set for sanding, which will probably be my next video on these tutorials on basic model building. And before I wrap up, I'm going to go and work with the basic type Tamiya putty. I want to give you an example of how that's used and applied. And what I do is I work on a scratch surface here, piece of cardboard from my M113. Huh, cute. There's a lot of videos. Some model builders will actually just have bottles, empty bottles, and they'll just make putty that's already mixed, thinned, and it's available. I don't do it for some reason. I think my concern is I don't know how long it's going to survive in that bottle. I suppose it's airtight. It's no different than being in this tube, as long as I got the cap on. So maybe I might do that. I know there's a lot of YouTuber model builders who use that method, so I may try that. And in this case, I'm going to thin it with, what will I thin it with? I just got ejection pin marks, and again, I had it too thin and it really shrank, so I'm just going to probably thin it with a little bit of liquid cement. And where is it? Ah, here it is. And in this case, I got a toothpick. I'll just stir it with that. Again, working with some of these cements and thinners and such, it's always a good rule of thumb to use proper ventilation. I can't stress that enough. I mean, as a kid, I just worked in the basement. That's all I knew, and there wasn't always ventilation, so I sometimes wonder if that may lead to some health problems down the road. I really hope not. With a hobby that you love, and such as myself and a whole host of millions of other people around the world, you want to stay in the hobby for as long as humanly possible. So it's always a good idea to use proper ventilation when working with this material. And so I think it's not too thin, not too thick. So again, I just use my paintbrush. Don't use my paintbrushes that I use in these videos for putties and such. These are my kind of junk brushes and stuff. I don't use these for painting at all. They have been retired for just working with putties and things. So I just want to apply just a wee bit there. And I'm going to go over some of my holes that I had made. Hope you can see this at all, I don't know. And just kind of fill it. And in this case, I kind of want to leave a bit of a bump. I want to leave something to sand. And also, I know it might shrink, so I'm kind of overcompensating for that, which I hope works. Well, when I used the first coat, I used a Tamiya lacquer thinner, and it really thinned it out, and it was almost like paint, which is kind of cool in some fine line seams and gaps that are really thin. But in this case, there was a bit of depression, and so using a little thicker putty is going to help prevent some of that shrinking. I mean, it's going to shrink a little bit, I expect it, but the second coat, I've never had to use 3 coats before. In my next video, I'm going to be talking about sanding, because I think we're going to have to do some sanding of these injection pin putty fills, and how you do that without making things more problematic. In this case, I don't know if you can see, but I got these ribs inside the fuselage, and I'm working in between them, and that may be a problem because I have to sand this putty down afterwards. And so how do we do that? I want to talk about making sanding sticks that are used for taking care of these little problems so that it doesn't make too much damage. So again, thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. Please, feedback is always good, because I have no idea if this is not something that's interesting or not. I hope it is, but it helps me, gives me a better idea of what maybe the people would like to see. Wow, that dries really fast. I'm pretty impressed. And there's not too much sinking of the holes. That's going to be okay. And so there it is. How do we thin this stuff? You know, because you want to keep these brushes for as long as possible without damaging it. So I just have my little palette that I use. And where's my Tamiya thinner? I'm just going to use a little bit of thinner and a little pipette. Open up my cap. Take a little bit out. And I'm just going to drop some in there. No, don't need a lot. But the remainder can go back inside. Put the cap on, because again, we don't want too many fumes coming in. And all I gotta do is just clean my brush, my bristles, and this comes off really well. And I can use the brush later on down the road. And again, I don't pay too much. I bought this. This is a bag of like 10 brushes of various sizes for $3 at Michael's. Maybe there's a Hobby Lobby in your town. They have to sell the same stuff. They're not. They're just generic brushes. And I think for working for putty and dry brushing, you don't want to use a good brush and ruin them by these kind of methods of working. It's just that's a shame. And it's all cleaned up, and I got myself a paper towel right here. You always have a paper towel nearby to dry up your brush. And you know, this should last me maybe a year or two. And just throw it back in my jar, my little cup, and it's ready for the next job. And again, I thank you for watching. This is Russ Goslin. I hope things are going well with your modeling projects. And again, feedback is always good. It helps me learn. I think when, you know, kind of like any teacher or anybody who's sharing information, you know, the learning process, I think, is mutual. You know, people on YouTube are watching and learning, but I think when you teach, you yourself are learning things too. Things come into focus. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time. Bye.